A very warm welcome to this session with David Hieatt at the Purpose Collective. David, we are so grateful that you've made the time to be here.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I feel you hardly need an introduction, but I'm going to say a few words and then ask you a couple of questions and then hand over to you as our guest speaker.
Okay.
So you're a serial entrepreneur, founder, and I'm sure many people here are familiar with the Do books, Do Purpose, Do Open, the Do lectures. And also you're the founder of the Hieatt Denim Company. And I think we're going to hear some of the very inspiring story. Let me ask you, and this is a question we love to hear speakers' response to. When you were a kid and asked that inevitable question, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your answer?
Well, I mean, as a kid, my entire bedroom, apart from the windows, which weren't allowed, and the door handle, was covered in posters of my favorite brands at the time. And they were like Puma, Nike, Levi's, Wrangler. I mean, basically who would ever would send me posters, because I was just all into it. And even the ceiling, like everything was covered in the poster apart from the window. The window was like, my mum just said, no, you can't have the window. That's for things to come through called light. So yeah, I was always curious and had the fascination for brands. So yeah, it was early days for me.
Yeah, but you had a bedroom full of those different brands. And what about a purpose hero, a superhero for you? And that might be somebody.
Well, I mean, I cannot. I really am big fans of Yvonne Chouinard and Melinda. I think what they've done as a couple to grow their business, and I'm fascinated by how they run it. And we came very close when I was running Howie's to Patagonia wanted to buy Howie's, and but at the time Patagonia was having a bit of a rocky time, so they pulled out. But I had a conversation with Yvonne before I started Hieatt, and I said, Yvonne, because I didn't keep hold of Howie's, and I said to him, I said, look, how did you keep hold of Patagonia? And he said, well, 40 years hard work and 2 remortgages. And I went, yeah. And so I kind of, I've been very lucky to have that conversation with him. And I recently spoke to Vincent, who went as intern to Patagonia 48 years ago, and is now chief philosopher at Patagonia. But I wrote a journey of a carrot on Howie's catalogs, and it was the most boring piece of copy I've ever written. And it said every left turn, right turn from Poland to cardigan, as a, trying to map out actually the consequences of taking a carrot from Poland to cardigan. And actually that became Patagonia's Footprint Chronicles that inspired them to go and do it. And that was from the horse's mouth from Vincent. So I've always been a fan, and in a very small way, played a small part in that amazing company. So
wow, and well, thank you for sharing those conversations with us as well. And as I say, David, we're delighted you're here. Thank you so much. And the floor is yours. We're all ears. Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna have to do the technical bit now, which is the thing that can go a bit pear-shaped, but we'll see. So I'm going to want to talk about culture and purpose and freedom, and I think running a business is kind of peculiar and hard and very rewarding, but it's not always easy. And if I think back to Howie's, I mean, I started in 1995, but I didn't get a paycheck until 2001. And, if I think about the Do lectures, I mean, the first 10 years, we didn't get a salary. So it's sometimes like people think, oh, you can make a lot of money, but sometimes you just need a lot of patience. And but the thing that maybe holds me strong is if I have belief in it, I can keep doing it, even if the data tells me I shouldn't. And so like when I was doing Howie's, like the data fought me pretty much every day. I couldn't get it to work. And yet in the end, it became a very successful venture. And the reason we sold it was not really for money. It was trying to get somebody to help us because we didn't know what we were doing. We were super naive, and we built it without really having a meaningful marketing budget. And yet when we went to sell it, we had, Steve Case, said he would give us $25 to $30 million if we moved it to California. Japan's richest guy said he would invest. Nike, after we sold, said they would have invested if we knew we were for sale. PPR, who owned Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, and Puma, highlighted two brands in the world they wanted to buy. One was Quicksilver, and one was Howie's. So, but the thing that I sort of got to is we sold it to Timberland, and actually at that point, the company lost its purpose, because actually part of its purpose was to be independent. And actually, if we had a bit more confidence and a bit more knowledge of running a business, we could have carried on and pursued the dream. And so I tell that story to tell you, actually, when we started Hieatt Denim Company, was we took a lot of that learning with us, and the purpose of the Hieatt Denim Company was really simple. It was, could we try, and as much as it's a crazy dream, is could we go and get 400 people their jobs back? The town, Cardigan Town, is 4,000 people, many more sheep than people, but it had Britain's biggest jeans factory, and it made 35,000 pairs of jeans a week for nearly 40 years. And in 2002, the factory closed and 400 world-class makers didn't have anything to make. And the thing is, if you're a maker town and that's your identity, and then you stop making, that's problematic. So suddenly, what are you really about then? Are you just a tourist town? And growing up in the South Wales valleys, I'd seen that story before, because when I used to go to school on the bus, affectionately called the Iron Lung, because when it went around corners, the mud guards used to make sparks. And to the left of the morning, there were coal miners there. And they had white faces and a sandwich tin. And then at 3:30, we'd come back, and on the other side of the road, they were going home, and they had black faces, and they had sandwich tins, which were most likely empty. And they were always there until one day they weren't there. And so, I mean, if you think about like a car crash and you see all the bits of glass move through the air ever so slowly, and they spin, and that was like what I was seeing with the community. Was like that was the end of that community as they currently knew it. And the crash was in slow motion, because you think, oh, it's not making much difference, it's not making much difference, and then all of a sudden, bam. And so I'd seen that, grew up with it, and I saw how much it hurt the South Wales valleys. And that's not to say the economics were like sustainable or anything. I'm just making the point about the impact on the community. And so for Cardigan Town to have its biggest employer suddenly shut up shop, is that car crash was going to happen again. And so a number of years later, myself and Claire, we left Howie's and we walked away from a considerable sums of money, because we just valued our independence much more than anything else. And we sort of said, what is it that we know? And what is it the town can do better than anybody else? And we had to wait for this incredible century-defining thing to happen called the internet. And so suddenly we had the skills of making, we had the skills to a certain level of brand building, and we had this other thing called the internet. Because the old factory had fought the battle of who could be the cheapest, and it wasn't us, and it was never going to be us again. And so the internet would allow us to fight the battle of who could be the best. And for me, that was kind of interesting, because I think at that point we could win. And so, like very strong purpose, very crystal clear understanding of the dream. Could we get 400 people at Jobs back? I don't know. Should we try? Definitely so. And as of today, we're 28 or 30 people, 10 years in, and so, and the cynics will say, yeah, well, you're not going to get 400 people. I'm going, well, it is not impossible because the other company did it. And so we might have to do it in a different way, but it is deeply possible. So, but this is the old factory. It was a machine. It was, Britain's biggest. And they'd taken, the thing when you're making at that level is every second counts. So they'd taken every second of wasted time out of that process, and they were profitable until the day they stopped. And it was an absolute machine. The interesting thing is, Marks and Spencer's was its biggest customer, and they went to Morocco, and then they decided that wasn't cheap enough. Then they went to Bangladesh. Then they said, oh, that's not cheap enough. And then they went to China, and and even now you go, maybe they're thinking about going somewhere else. The interesting thing is, from their point of view, is the person who took over the old factory in Morocco, they decided getting to the market quicker was much more important than actually getting to the market cheaper. And M&S have chased cheap, and in the end, now they're struggling. And I find that really super fascinating. And you go, oh, okay. And the time to market now is actually more important than the cost to market. So this was the old factory. So in 2002, it closed. So it was empty for 10 years. So when we started in an industrial state. There was just 5 or 6 of us. And then, Meghan Markle, bless her, started wearing our jeans, and then we had to move back to a bigger factory. And that meant we could go back to the actually old factory. So we actually moved back to the old factory where the Grandmasters used to make jeans, and actually, oddly, where we used to run Howie's from. So we're both going back. And I just wanted to check the energy on the day that, I said, hey, we could go back to the old factory. And I just want to make sure that everyone was cool with that, because they spent 10, 20, 25 years in that factory. And when, do you want to go back? Did we want to go back? Was the energy good? And we all went back, and we just stood in, lots of the Grandmasters were actually standing in the place where they used to sew. And actually somebody said, so, hey, we half completed the mission. This time we need to complete it. And it was at that moment I'm going, oh, the energy is good, let's go. And we moved back into the factory, and it's super nice. And we spent all the money on the toilets. The toilets have underfloor heating. Our landlords had begged us not to spend any money. And I just said, look, man, if anyone's going to come in here and do a hard day's work, we have to create an environment that they want to come in. I mean, our strength is actually the Grandmasters actually want to walk in the door each morning. And the moment they don't, then we don't really have a business. So I sort of run the business with Claire. I mean, I've known her for a fair while. Actually, this is a photograph of me and her. uncle was my next door neighbor, and he was my football manager. And to her, it was Uncle John. And to me, he was my tough cookie football manager who made me run around football fields, even when I was knackered. So we've known each other a fair while, and we run the business together. And I think when you're running a business, it's really important that it's really hard when you're doing it on your own. Like, so I have deep respect for single founders. But for me, like running it with a co-founder, and especially if it's someone you deeply trust, then that's much easier. And that's not to say that we agree all the time. We've been married 28 years. I desperately hope it's 29 years. But like, man, I go to meetings and it's so frustrating. And like I'll say an idea and it'll get thrown back, and I'm going, oh. But it's actually really good to have somebody like battle test your ideas, and also you have to then think about it before you actually say the idea. You have to really battle test it, and so that's kind of interesting. So, but the thing I think about in terms of brands is the great brands are really a well-told story, and you have to make a great service. You have to make a great product. I mean, of course you do. That's just excellence now is just taken as standard. Oh, you're going to be the best in the world. Oh, yeah, good job. Of course you are. And you have to be. But we are, as founders, we have to tell our stories well. And if we go back to Yvon Chouinard at Patagonia, I think he's a good storyteller because of one crazy reason. Like, climbers have to spend an awful lot of time in a tent waiting for weather to break. And they're in a really confined space. And the only thing they can do for days is tell stories. And actually, that's why I think he's such a good storyteller. Because like climbers are some of the best storytellers ever, because they literally have to wait for days, sometimes weeks. And all you have to do, there's no television, there's no Netflix, as good as that brand is. There's nothing apart from your ability to keep the other person entertained. And so for me, is part of my job is to go and tell that story. So today I'm telling the story. And the interesting thing is, you got to tell it to like small gatherings, big gatherings, medium-sized gatherings, but you know, especially in the early days, you have to go and tell that story. And the most interesting thing for founders is not to get bored by your own story. And people think they have to go and change their story. No, they just have to go and tell it well. Yeah, and keep telling the same story. I say this thing all the time. I'm going, my town is making jeans again. And people go, does that mean they used to make jeans? And so we start the conversation then. So don't get bored by your own story and keep telling it. Your job is to tell it well. I mean, I was never really fond of doing talks. I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi when I was 21. I couldn't spell. I had no grammar, but I could think, and I had a chance. But I went to about 2 meetings, and I said hello twice in 7 or 8 years. So I was super shy, super introverted. I wasn't a great one for like standing up and telling the world what I did, except that suddenly became my job. And so I wouldn't sleep. If I was having a big talk, I wouldn't sleep, I wouldn't eat. I felt sick. I'd be in the toilet like half an hour before, just going, oh my God, I'm never going to say yes to a talk ever again. This is the last time. This is it. But what I had to do was go and get to a point where I could be comfortable telling the story. And the only way to do that was through practice. And so anybody who'd ask me to go and do a talk, I would literally go and do it. I went and did this talk to some young offenders once, And there was 7 of them in the room, and 5 of them were asleep. And I kept doing the talk, and the other 2 were bored rigid. They just wished they were asleep. And it's fine. And I would come to this shed and I would practice with my phone to do talks. And my youngest got hold of my phone once and she said, "Dad, take 22 is the best one you did." And that's awful. And so it's kind of, but that thing of going, "Oh, I don't like doing talks." It's your job. That's your job. If you're a founder, that's your job. Don't like it, tough. Get good at it. It just needs practice. And guess what? If you're super nervous, they know that you care and it's fine. So, and I think the most powerful person is the storyteller. I think Steve Jobs is right. And there's an art to telling the story. So, when he launched the iPod, it was 1,000 songs in your pocket. And yet everybody else was going, this one's got 1 terabyte or 1 gigabyte of data. So you have to understand you are a human being and you're actually talking to another human being. So I love this quote, and the job is to make your customers feel something as well as buy something. The 18 inches between your head and your heart is a journey most brands never take you on. And your job is to make your customers feel something for what you are doing. And if you're really good at it, you're going to get them to feel as much about it as you do. That's your job. And so, and it's not enough for you to care so deeply about it. You have to communicate. You have to, and people like, go, "Oh, that's just marketing." Your job is to market. Whether it's your cause, your urgency, you have to market. And marketing is just actually getting other people to care as much as you care about this thing. And actually, timing is really incredibly important, because you can be very right in terms of the dream that you want to chase, but you can be very wrong in terms of time. And for me, if I think about, Hieatt, it was just in the right moment where the internet was really just getting interesting. Twitter was just happening. Instagram was just happening. Facebook was quite, just happening. And we might not like all those things right now, but in the early days, they definitely helped us tell our story. They built these motorways in the sky for our stories to go on. And at the time, they were going on for for free. And now it's harder because those motorways have a toll charge and we have to pay for our stories to go on them. And that's a bit harder. But if it wasn't for the internet, the economics of the company wouldn't work, because we can only really truly make it work if we go direct to customer, because we have more expensive labor. We buy the best denim in the world. We could never do it on a wholesale model, and direct to consumer would allow us to win. So that's the Hieatt Denim Company, and I'll share this film just because I kind of like it. And it's the best part of business is building a team. And the reason purpose matters the most is it gives fulfillment to the team when they come together to go and do the goal. And that's why it gives you the grit. And grit is a beautiful thing. And I didn't realize, my mom used to say, "You are the most stubborn mule on the planet." And I didn't realize that was actually a blessing, because otherwise I would have quit Howie's after 5 years. I would have quit the Do Lectures after 10 years. And I'm just like, I've fallen in love with the incremental change that a day can bring. And I know people chase these big goals, but if you keep chasing little goals and often and you get to them, in the end, the big goal will come. And I think you should need to fall in love with the incremental change of today. So I mean, that's a film. I mean, the great thing about like when your story is strong is other people want to tell it on your behalf. So we have no end of filmmakers say to us, "Can we come down and make a film and tell your story?" And I'm going, "I'll put the kettle on," because like we can't, really, still with a very micro sort of marketing budget, is we need other people to tell our stories. The power of your story is other people actually want to tell it on your behalf. And to give you an example of that is one of the best things we can do for the environment. Like we can do, we can take microplastics out of jeans, they shouldn't be there. And we can use organic cotton. We can have 10x less water on all those things. But actually, when you analyze the impact, because sometimes people chase the wrong thing. And so actually, when you look at the environmental impact of a pair of jeans, is 80% of it, and we might not like this, is 80% of the impact is by you and I washing it. 20% of it is actually us making it and how we make it. And so people chase the 20%, but the biggest change comes from the 80%. And that's sometimes what happens when, like you get this greenwash stuff going on. But we started a club because the clubs are really cheap and they were within our budget. And so we just set our customers a challenge. And so I joined the No Wash Club. And actually, when we first did this badge, we did it 3 months because we said, like, no one's going to be crazy enough to do it for 3 months. They're just not. And then people would email us and say, "Oh, we've done 6 months. Can we have a different badge?" And then they email us and said, "We've done 9 months. Can we have a different badge?" I'm going, man, we spend a fortune on these badges. But I sat down with a journalist from The Guardian, and he said, "Hey, these jeans, I haven't washed them in 3 years." And my postman Simon, I saw the other day, he said, Dave, like my jeans, I haven't washed them in 2 years. And that's the power of your story. So people just go, like, they joined the club. And the interesting thing is, like, if you think about, like, you know, the marathon club. So when people started running marathons, you go, oh, I'm in a marathon club, which is already pretty small compared to how many other people who have not done a marathon. There's always going to be somebody who say, hey, do you know what? I need more pain. And that's what, you know, then people invented the Ironman, because there wasn't enough pain in just the marathon. And so us starting the No Wash Club for 3 months, they're going, man, we're going to blow this out of the park. But your customers will tell your story for you if you tell it well enough. And so, and then, like, what happens is other people want to tell your story on your behalf. That's your real power, especially if your marketing budget is, you know, next to nothing. And my daughter took a photo of me when we started it, and I made her take the photo about 20 times. And I can remember, like, her just like having, like, you know, having a go at me. She says, why are you taking this photo so many times? Like, why are you, you know, and she took it and we got her to do it again. And then I got her to do it again. And then I got her to do it again. And then 10 years later, after she took that photo, Apple came to us and said, can we use your photo? And I said, well, I'll have to ask my daughter, because she actually holds the rights. So I'll share this one, you know, because I am an Apple fan. And so Liverpool Football Club are not going to ask me to play for them. So I've given up on that dream. But this is, you know, a close second that Apple said, could we put you in the TV commercial? And I'm going, man, oh yeah.
Lopsided and the birds fly sideways, and I shake the sky with a heavenly smile on my face, and I draw Picassos and I spray paint Banksies, and we live on LOV like it was our salaries, and we plant these seeds and we call ideas, and they grow like trees bearing fruits on twigs, and we just don't need
So, I mean, that's kind of like, I think maybe we go to a breakout and stuff, but I do feel like the real joy of running a business, if you have set your path and you're doing something that you care about, is the real joy is to go and build the team and be a coach to them rather than a boss to them, and see if you can get your people to fly. And Ryan Holiday, who spoke at the Do, he wrote this quote, and I kind of love it. And it's your potential, your absolute best you're capable of. That's the metric to measure yourself against. Your standards. Winning is not enough. People can get lucky and win. People can be assholes and win. Anyone can win, but not everyone is the best possible version of themselves. And so when you're running a business, you're responsible for other people's potential. And you can crush them, or you can help them to fly. But the best thing you can do is to encourage them, to help them, to guide them, and to set them on a path to reach their potential. And seeing some of your team fly, even when they didn't think they could do it, that is truly the best part of business for me. So that's kind of my my sort of, I don't know, talk today. I mean, and I guess there's breakout rooms, or can't quite remember what I'm supposed to do now, but I'm supposed to do something.
So what is there a question you could pose, David, based upon that? I guess an invitation for people, a reflection. Do you want to finish with that last point about purpose and teams and getting the best out of people? What would you encourage people to discuss?
It's not really a question, but it's a thought, and that is, why don't you stop being a boss and start being a coach? Because I think at that point, you'll get a different result. You get a much better result. A lot of entrepreneurs are desperately trying to grow their business. But if you start growing your people, by default, your business is going to grow. So the question is, are you a boss or are you a coach?
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to open the rooms in groups of 3 and 4. We're at 2:40, so should we say 10 minutes, and then we can have a bit of a debrief when people come back? Yeah, okay, so we're going to open the rooms and we'll see you back here in just over 10 minutes. If anyone wants to ask David a question, just feel free either to physically put your hand up or use the reaction thing, and then David will be happy to ask any questions. So use the chat. So Andy, you've got your hand up. You unmute and.
David, welcome from Barry Island, I'm a great fan. Firstly, I should ask, can we create a collection of Welsh legends of business stories? I teach at 2 Welsh universities, and they have like case studies from all around the world except Wales, and I think we should be developing the stories of great people like you to inspire other Welsh people. So really, the question is, what's the next chapter?
I think, that's an interesting one. It's the thing I'm really interested now. We make jeans for Rennie Rossetti. He's like world's best chef, and so, but he got world's best chef by serving 45 people, and even though like the dream for me is, can I get 400 people their jobs back? The initial chapter right now is, how do we be the most influential denim brand in the world with 30 people? And so what I'm trying to scale is our influence, and the size of the company can come afterwards. So I'm really keen to go and show how we can do things in such a different way, so we become like not all giants are big, and so I'm really interested in that thing of like the power of like serving 45 people and yet you're the world's best chef. And so I'm going, we can be a 30-person company that absolutely changes the industry. And so I'm chasing influence, and I think trying to scale that is of real interest to me right now.
Excellent, thank you, David. More questions? We've got a question in the chat from Ali, and she says, "Thanks, Steve Fuller." But he says, "Does the word boss have any currency now?"
There's some great bosses. I've had some great bosses. So and so it's not that that's it's a bad word. It's just, for me, I struggled with being a boss. I don't like being a boss, and so like I'm not really a good boss myself. And I'm a sports fan, but being a coach to someone is of real interest to me, because then you're going, I'm not telling you what to do. I think if you did it this way, I think you might get a better result. And for me, that's much more an interesting and more enjoyable thing. And I've been a reluctant boss for too long. And when after Howie's, I just done, hey, do you know what? I'm just not a very good boss, but I could be a really good coach. And that's much more interesting to me. So, but it's a personal thing. Some people love being a boss. Man, do it my way or off you go. I don't know. I'm not good at that.
I think it's Steve Fuller, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wondered if David had tried to get Jurgen Klopp to wear a pair of his jeans.
Well, I mean, I've sort of I'll share a secret with you, kind of, I've been a fan for like a ridiculous amount, 4 decades, and yet I'd never been to the stadium. And so my mate Bob, who I'd hired, he said, "Come to the game. You know, I'm a season ticket holder. We'll go to the game." And I sat down and I realized, I'm going, man, I've literally watched everything they've done. You know, even on text for like 90 minutes, watching a text for 90 minutes. And I sat at the stadium. I'm going, man, this is the first time I've ever been to the stadium. I must have given like no money in 40 years. I don't buy shirts. I kind of give them money in terms of BT Sport or whatever, but not directly. I'm going, and Kevin Kelly wrote The Power of 1,000 True Fans. And when I was sitting there in the stadium going, man, like, I think Liverpool got 1 million true fans that they don't even know about. And so I went away. I'm going, right, I'm going to go and write this article, and I'm going to write it for one person. And it's like, and I started writing it, and I haven't finished it yet. But I wanted to like write this article just for Jurgen Klopp, for him to go, that was a great article. I'm going, do you want some jeans? So I haven't got there yet, but that was my mad kind of thing. So I've just got to follow through.
Excellent. And I think we've got time for one more question. So Sarah Greenaway's got a hand up as well. So Sarah.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, David. It's so fascinating. I've got a really generic question for you, actually, around what's going on more widely in the fashion world. And there's lots of talk about doing things in a more sustainable way. And I'm just curious as to where your feeling is about how that's progressing, and how genuine it is in terms of stated purpose around sustainability from lots of the fashion world, particularly in the denim world. I'd just love to know how optimistic or otherwise you might be.
Well, I think optimism and hope are fundamentally important, and we shouldn't devalue how important they are, because they keep us going. So when I sort of see greenwash, and there's plenty of it there, in a way I don't mind it, because at least if they go and find out that actually their customers are really super interested in this, then maybe they will get more into it themselves. So, and that's like an odd kind of viewpoint, because most people go, well, that's terrible that they're saying things, but hopefully their customers are so smart, and they are, is they have like bullshit detectors, like, and the kids, they're literally like born to like find the crack, and that their customers will challenge them to get better and better and better. So I'm hopeful from that point of view. I'm not into fashion. I don't get it. I mean, I in so many ways, but I do know that if you make something so classic and so understated, that he can last. Because actually, if you think about what happens is, when we discard something, I think we discard it with our eyes long before we do with our hands, and so we get bored of things. And so when things are really super highly fashionable, they're in a moment, then they are out of the moment. But if you can design things in such a classic way, they're never in the moment, and they're never truly out of the moment. So I think design has a place to, like, for me, the more classic you can make something, the longer it's going to last. And so I'm kind of interested in that. But the high fashion, I don't really get it. And my daughters like literally kind of roll their eyes at me. But my youngest said to me, he said, I don't know why anybody would now start a brand that wasn't sustainable. But the one thing I'll say about the word sustainable is everything we do at Hieatt has an impact, and everything we do is extractive. So we're part of the problem. And you know, the elephant in the room is every company's trying to grow, and it's like the thing that no one talks about. And even me, like my tension is I want to get 400 people their jobs back. We go, man, if I do that, I'm gonna have a bigger impact. And so I'm like in my head, I'm just going, whoa, how do we, I don't know truly how to solve that. That's why I'm chasing influence right now, because I'm trying to scale influence rather than the size of the company. And I'll be honest, like it's a real conundrum. I'm just like, wow, it's just, and all we can do though, the hope is that we can find better ways, and that's, you know, we've got a big thing on the building, just said, how can we be lower impact today than we were yesterday? Having a mission statement is okay. Having a mission question is much more powerful, because if you think about a statement, it's a final act. It's a statement, whereas a question is, man, can we get better today than we were yesterday? It's evolving and there's energy still intact. So yeah, I think hope is really important. And if there's one thing you want to take away from this talk, is go and read, I haven't got it, hang on. Go and read E.B. White's letter about Wind the Clock, and that will give you hope. It's brilliant. I read it almost every morning, and I just read it and I just go, oh man, if I could ever write anything like that just once in my life, I would like literally be happy. But it is a reassurance of hope.
So thank you, David. Well, we will dig that out and we will send that out. We will send an email to everybody afterwards where we share the video. So I just wanted to, on behalf of the Purpose Collective and all of us, just say thank you for sharing your time so generously, your thoughts and your ideas. I think we try and catch a photo. We have overrun, but if people are okay, we could try and do a quick photo.
Yeah, I'll have two screens, so two pictures, and yeah, just try to show how you feel about this session. Lots of inspiration, lots of the 1, 2, 3, and then the next one. Bear with me. 1, 2, 3. There you go. Well, thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. And hopefully you'll join us again. It's going to be the end of the month because we've got Easter, so it's a 3-week break, but we've got Sunny Burnell from agency called Motto, and the topic, I think it follows on great from this session, is how non-conformist people can help your brand innovate. So hope you'll join us again. Feel free to unmute yourselves and say bye to everybody, and thank you to David, and we hope to see you all soon.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.